going on? Jaws87 here, and today I'm going to be discussing the Resident Evil Village reviews. So right now, as of the recording of this video, Resident Evil Village is sitting at an 84 on Metacritic with 70 reviews. So the game is great. It is kind of what we expected. It's in line with a lot of other really good games that we've played. Resident Evil Village, it's not going to be kind of what Resident Evil 4 was back in 2005, where it kind of changed third-person action games. But this is a really good game according to reviewers. The review scores vary. You have reviews upwards of 95 all the way down into the 60s, but the vast majority of them are sticking in between that 80 to 90 range. So in the reviews, I've read about a half a dozen of them, and I kind of want to just discuss some of the overlap we see in the reviews. So the first thing is the game length. Game length is about 10 hours long. And when I read that, honestly, I'm a little bit disappointed. I was hoping more for like a 25 hour type of game, but the reviewers are saying that there's a lot of replayability, New Game Plus, and then also there's the Mercenaries mode, which is kind of the time attack score based game mode that you can play afterwards. But 10 hours isn't very long, but it seems from the reviewers, what they're saying, that those 10 hours are really good. So, but I would take a 10-hour game that's great over a bloated 40 hour game. Another thing that the reviewers are discussing is enemy variety. So any of you that have played Resident Evil 7, game was great. I love Resident Evil 7, but one of the things about it was, other than the boss fights, there was kind of only like one type of enemy throughout the game, kind of those mold creatures. But this game seems to continue to transition into different enemy types. They heard the feedback from Resident Evil fans from Resident Evil 7 and have added many different enemies in the game. And also, there's a variety of boss fights throughout the game, so that's exciting to hear. One of the really big things that they hit on in these reviews, and anyone who's played the demos or watched some of the gameplay for this game kind of knows somewhat, is the game's more action-based. It's not as slow-paced and even as scary as Resident Evil 7. It's a little bit more open. There's more ammo available. I mean, it's kind of like more like Resident Evil 4 in that sense, where the game is definitely scary, but it's also kind of action-packed, and it's going to probably rub some people in a positive way or a negative way, depending on what you want from a horror game. Do you want something that's really slow-paced, very scary, watching even every single bullet, like kind of like a Resident Evil 7, or do you want something that opens up more and you can have more of that heart-pounding action-type gameplay that we all came to love in Resident Evil 4? Another thing they're saying is, and I alluded to it before, is it's not as scary as 7. Just because the game's more open, it's a little more action-based, there's not as many tight spaces. They say like the castle's one region you'll go to that kind of mimics like the Baker house somewhat, but because it's open, because it's more action-based, the scares aren't as intense as Resident Evil 7, which I'm kind of disappointed. I love the horror of Resident Evil 7, but I think the developers in Capcom realized that Resident Evil 7 was so scary it may have hurt sales somewhat, so they probably wanted to scale it back slightly and allow this game to be a little bit more mainstream. Not saying it's not going to be scary at points, but it is not as continually terrifying, at least according to reviewers, as Resident Evil 7 was. And next we have puzzles. There was a few puzzles in Resident Evil 7 that I love, but it looks like in Resident Evil 8 there's puzzles throughout. A couple reviewers had different takes on it. One said he wished the puzzles were harder and more intense, and another reviewer was saying that the puzzles were great because they didn't slow me down. I didn't have to sit here for a half hour thinking through a puzzle. So I guess your take will vary depending on if you wanted difficult puzzles or maybe more simplistic puzzles. If you wanted more simplistic puzzles, you'll probably be a little more happy. You might not get something like, if you play Resident Evil 7, the birthday cake puzzle, which was great. It looks like the puzzles are going to be on the simple side of the spectrum. A couple other things to note are the audio seems to be praised. The 3D audio on the PlayStation 5 was praised in a couple of reviews. It looks like they kind of upped and delivered their promise on making it scary. As far as survival horror games, the audio is so pivotal to the scare factor and the player a sense of horror. So I think it seems that they delivered on that. The technical aspects seem great. Some are saying that it is the most beautiful game on the next gen. It's running on the PS5 and Xbox Series X at 4K 60 frames per second. You can also play the game on Xbox One and PS4, which is great for those of you that do not have a next-gen console. And also, it seems that there are kind of a lot of unique areas in the game, which is great. It seems like there's more variety with enemies and also different areas and bosses that have a lot of personality. So it seems like this game is a little bit wider in scope than Resident Evil 7, where it was mostly in the Baker house and there's a couple environments at the end of the game. But this one seems to open up earlier and allow you to go to a handful of different environments. So overall, it seems like this is a great Resident Evil game. I mean, it's not probably going to be like a game of the year or a game of the generation type game based on this review score, but it doesn't mean if you love survival horror, you loved Resident Evil 7, you love the first person aspect of these games, it doesn't mean you won't love this game. So I'm going to be picking it up. I'm ready to jump in and play through Ethan Winters' story, see what happens here. And I just love how they're trying to recapture the magic of Resident Evil 4. You know, when I first saw the scores, I was slightly disappointed. I was hoping it kind of would hit in the 90s, but, you know, I'm still excited for this game. And I want to hear from you in the comments. What do you think? Are you excited for this game? Are you going to wait for a sale? Are you going to be picking it up on day one? Let me know in the comments. And if you like what I'm trying to do here, my channel is all about discussing new and upcoming games and also news in the gaming space. So if that's something you're interested in, please subscribe. I'll be trying to make at least 2 to 3 videos a week. And until next time, this has been Jaws87. Take care.